Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at onpurposely.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and this podcast is dedicated to helping families love God and use tech. Today, we are joined by Micah Roberts. Welcome, Micah.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we're doing a little bit of a What the Tech kind of mini-series. You are listening to the first of this drop, but the idea is we have some content and some conversations we want to have that don't necessarily fit into the regular Gospel Tech, release of content and information, but they're still important for parents, and they might be so niche that not every parent wants to hear them. So today we're talking, Micah, about what?
Gamer rage.
Gamer rage. This idea that, like, you may have witnessed it. If you have a gamer in your household, there's a time where a controller may have been thrown, or a keyboard broken, or
like a knee slapped,
or
like a desk slammed, or
a wall punched. Something in where there has been a release of what was the word we were using earlier?
Vitriol.
There it is. So I think that's kind of our conversation for today is, what do we need to know about this as parents? How can we address this intentionally? And how do we know if it's a problem, what might cause the problem, and what we could even do about it? So with no further ado, let's get this conversation started. Welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast, a resource for parents who feel overwhelmed and outpaced as they raise healthy youth in a tech world. As an educator, parent, and tech user, I want to equip parents with the tools, resources, and confidence they need to raise kids who love God and use tech. Thank you to everyone who's helped make this podcast possible. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Thank you to those who are donating. If you want to join us financially on this ministry, you can go to gospeltech.net, click the donate button, and join us there. Today, we are talking about gamer rage. So, Michael, we talked a little bit in the intro, but why don't you tell us kind of what are we talking about? When we mean gamer rage, what in the world is that?
It's just when you're playing a game and you get mad at it. Very plain and simple.
Does it have to be a violent game? Like, are we just this is a first-person shooter thing?
It doesn't have to be.
What's a game that's made you rage?
Ooh. Anything that's like competitive. Like an Overwatch where it's like 6 people trying to do an objective.
Okay.
And the team's not doing great. Because I used to actually play it competitively for like in-game rank and like in-game rewards. Yeah. So I was actually trying to do good, not just trying to have fun.
Which is, I think, a critical first point. So when we're talking about this, parents and gamers who might be listening to this, old and young, this is the shift in gaming. Like, there was a time where video games were just video games. It was Mario Brothers.
Yep.
So all of us growing up probably remember, let's talk Duck Hunt. Mm-hmm. There was a little dog at the bottom of the screen, and he would make fun of you when you missed the duck. And it was cute the first like 3 times. And then at some point, it started to get personal. And some of us, not naming any names, may still hold a grudge against this darn little dog who mocked our failings. Mm-hmm. That would be an example of the beginning of this rage. But games went from just, we're having fun, we're trying something difficult, we're playing together, to this is competitive. Like, I have stuff on the line, and other people are messing up my attempts.
Yeah.
So then you get mad.
Yes.
What is kind of the range? Because rage is a really strong word, and it's it's almost a meme-y term. Like, it's not always rage. What can this look like when we have this game-induced frustration? What might it come out like? What should parents be looking for?
Well, first off, yelling.
Yeah, yelling. Yes.
It's the first one because you're communicating with your teammates, and when you get mad, you communicate a little bit louder.
More forcefully.
Yeah. It takes a while to get to a point where you throw something and like start causing damage.
Okay.
Especially if you're conscious of what you're holding, because that's like a $70 controller.
Yeah, it's real. And sometimes at a multiple $100 screen.
Exactly.
They often are connected.
But like, it can even be like I have friends who, like, when they're mad, they'll just stop talking. In a game where communication is key, they'll just try and do the best they can, but not talk to anybody.
Mute, not speaking to anyone. There might be wisdom in that.
Right.
Yeah, so, all right. So we have this kind of range. And so parents, as we're thinking through this, I don't know if it feels weird, depending where you're at in your comfort with video games and like being around them. Your child might have these very visceral reactions to video games. It might be because of people in the game. It might be because, and we'll talk about this later, the game's designed to be insanely frustrating. And that's both why they play it, but also why they hate it. And we do need to be aware that there's kind of a funny side of this, right, Micah?
Yeah.
And then there's like the not so healthy funny side. How do we differentiate between those two? And what do we mean by the funny side, by the way?
I mean, like, sometimes it's funny to like watch your friends get mad at a game, like if they're just bad that day, like they can't hit shots or they can't like do whatever. It's funny watching them get a little bit frustrated.
Okay.
But when it gets to like a bad point where it's no longer funny and it's like a problem, I think is when you stop doing the thing and you're still mad.
So like you're playing the game and then the game's over and like now you're just mad at the people that were in the game.
Now you're just in a very bad mood.
Yeah.
Like you finish the match and like you're done playing for the day. You get off like the Xbox or the PlayStation and you're still mad. And you just go about the rest of your day or like next few hours just still mad.
Right. And then now it's impacting how you treat your parents, how you treat your real life friends that were on that game that was supposed to be for fun and it's not fun. And now you're just in a dark place. And I think as we think through this, we can tie this to real world sports. Let's because I think that's an analogy a lot of parents can connect to is this idea of like parents, we've all been in a sport and then had that really frustrating thing, right? Someone missed the block, they missed the shot, they didn't try their hardest, they were distracted, like whatever happened, the coach made a terrible call. And we have that in-game frustration. And we as Christians need to recognize like, that's not bad. Like being competitive is wonderful, in fact. There's a lot we can learn from adversity. There's a lot of our own personal character that gets exposed in kind of the fires of adversity and struggle. And yet, it can shift, right? And parents, this is when we talk to our kids about sportsmanship. It's not that we are saying don't go out there and try to win or do your best, but it's you stop yourself, and it's even okay to be frustrated in a game and to channel that. I know as a football coach and a wrestling coach, having a young person recognize, man, I'm mad, and then be able to like focus that anger, like that can be an amazing athletic improvement for that individual. That just the adrenaline and the hormones that are going on there can really help a kid.
It's just a burst of motivation for them to improve at what they are mad
at what they're doing, right?
At.
I'm going to show up every day now and I'm going to shoot these shots and I'm going to practice these drills and I'm going to show up on Saturday practice, right? Like I'm going to use that frustration from that loss or that situation. When it switches in sports, for example, would be when they start blaming others, when it carries over to real life, or when they start cheating effectively, when they start cutting corners and they take cheap shots and they start throwing bows and now physical safety is no longer in front of mind and they start thinking more selfishly. And I think that same rule applies in video games. When we skip from this is a game and I'm playing maybe competitively, but still a game at the end of the day. Like we're going to play for fun still, to no, these people are now obstacles to my real goal, and you flip the point of the game, and the game becomes the most important thing. Everyone else is now just a problem, and that would be an example of, all right, the rage is now consuming too much. It's no longer funny. And if you don't have any, should I name people? Let's name names.
Okay.
So if we say, well, first of all, where can someone go to watch if they don't have any concept of gamer rage?
You literally can just go to YouTube, type in like just gamer rage compilation. There you will find probably millions of videos of Twitch streamers who live stream video games, or YouTubers. And Twitch is a live streaming platform.
Okay, yeah.
So you can watch people play games and do other things.
It's
live.
a noun, not a verb.
Yes.
So it's not the thing Twitch. It's the place Twitch.
Yes.
So you can go there, and parents, just be forewarned, there will be swearing. We're talking about raging videos.
Yeah. When you are angry, you're like, I don't know the words. I'm bad.
You're not in control of yourself. Yes.
Words fail you, so you go to the words that hurt more.
Yes. Which is, I think, then our next point we're talking about. So there are individuals who are doing it to be funny. So you will watch Twitch streamers or famous individuals who rage because it's humorous. And they kind of have a persona, and the rage is part of that. The example that I would think of is if you're into Dude Perfect, like my family is, Tyler Toney, also known as TT in Dude Perfect World, he has a character in their sketches called the Rage Monster. And they do this whole sketch, and it's all about, stereotypes of people on airplanes or stereotypes of people camping. And then at some point, Tyler will have something bad happen to him, and he will rage. And that means something's going to get lit on fire, something's going to get broken, like a tractor's going to get driven through or over something. Like, it's just very over the top, but it's silly, and we get it. And my kids understand this isn't acceptable behavior, but it's still humorous to watch.
Yeah.
Some people in the gaming world do that, and they'll lose a game, and then they'll just lose their mind and yell about things that are very silly and like blame it on stuff that isn't reasonable. But we understand that's part of the persona. And then you get the side where it's actually just toxic, and this individual says things about people specifically or general categories of humans, and it's hateful and it's hurtful, and it does not help the world become a better place, and it doesn't reflect who God calls us to be. And I think we need to recognize that. Are our children, with their anger and with their competitive nature, which will show up if we're letting our kids play video games, especially games that have any form of competition, and especially games that are competitive online. So we're talking like if your kid plays Fortnite or Call of Duty or Apex Legend or Overwatch, like any of those games, if they play League of Legend or Dota, like these are highly competitive games. They're going to get competitive. They're going to get focused. The question is, what are they doing with their anger when they have it? Are they being Tyler Toney, and this is just like, we're having fun, we're being friends, and I'm just making a scene to make a scene? Or are we stepping over the line?
Yeah. Is it actually affecting my mental?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And your heart space, I guess, is the real thing. So one I want to bring up, parents here, and this might be too gamerish, so parents, bear with me. Tyler 1, excuse me.
Yes.
So who was Tyler 1?
Tyler 1 is an OG Twitch streamer who is most known for streaming League of Legends.
It's League of Legends. If you don't know League of Legends, you're going to have to look it up because we can't really explain it.
That's a whole nother podcast episode in its own.
It's its own, but it's a long-running, competitive professional game.
It's very competitive. Games are usually run very long, about 45 minutes.
Okay.
And it's like you alone cannot win a game against a team. It's very team-focused.
Yeah.
The entire game is everyone has their own things to do, and if they don't do it, then they lose.
Right. That's a great way to explain it. And so then Tyler 1 has had this journey. So about 4 years ago, why don't you take us through a little bit of his history?
He's a colorful fella. He is known both today in a good way and back then in a bad way for being very loud and screaming very loud. And it's, on one hand, quite funny, because sometimes he screams so loud that the mic just cuts out because the mic can't pick up sounds that loud.
Yeah.
But back in the day, he used to get banned because of how mad he used to get at League of Legends, meaning that he could not, on the account he had made to play League of Legends, he could not play the game anymore. And he could skirt around it by making a new account.
Right, but he wouldn't be ranked. Like, he loses all of his
you lose every
stuff.
character you unlocked. You lose any alternate outfits for those characters you've unlocked.
Yeah.
You unlock any ranking, any points you've gotten in the game are now gone when you're banned because you have to make a new
So this
account.
dude, and he was like, it's legitimate. If you go read any articles on him, folks, like, he was out of control, and he was saying things that were horrible, and he was effectively building an environment around him because people thought he was funny. So then they'd follow him, and then they'd think what he said was funny, and it was, I mean, not safe and not good. But flash forward 4 years. He's now like announcing and like running media front for the game, and
he's still a big personality in the competitive, like, we'll talk about it later, but esports of League of Legends. He's a huge personality in there, and he still yells very loud and is like quote unquote mad a lot in his streams, but it's more like a WWE persona now. It's no longer him being quite literally mad, even though he might be at like a loss, but it's no longer his actual reaction. It's played up for entertainment.
Yes,
now.
it's much more Hulk Hogan-y. Like, he is like, he's fired up, but it's not the out of control, like that lashing out at individuals, the same things that aren't helpful or true. Like, it's just a guy getting mad at his, poor play or at his team. And so when we talk about someone like that, what I want to bring up specifically when it comes to rage in the sense, so we see the connection to sports and we recognize, all right, like there is this competitive frustration that can come up. We recognize that some games are designed to be this way and some it's because of just our internal aspects of ourselves of like, man, I get mad when, which by the way is a great talking point with our kiddos. What makes you frustrated in your games? We'll talk about our talking points at the end. But also that if you have a kid who deals with frustration, games can be beneficial in that. They can be toxic is what we call it. Toxic is when the anger and the negativity gets to such a level that it's just self-feeding, that everyone who comes here gets so much just negativity thrown at them that there's really no way to have a positive outcome. You're just going to expect, and toxic players would be Tyler 1 was one of the best, of just making everyone there have a bad day because he showed up. And I think what we see now is, all right, he has found a way in maturing and in growing to hone some of that. And I'm not going to say, actually, parents, that he's in a good spot personally. I don't know Tyler 1 personally. Yeah. I will say that his presence on the internet is no longer what it was, where he was a face of just kind of hate and negativity in some really intentional ways, where that was kind of his goal. And he celebrated that like a biblical fool. And now he's kind of owned that and been like, no, like that's, I would say he's Robin Williams in later years. If any of you have listened to Robin Williams' early stuff, here's a random throughout. You wouldn't want your children to listen to that. And Robin Williams, late in life, right, was the voice of the genie in Aladdin and was very approachable and humorous, still talented, but kind of knew how to hone his craft and his humor to be more generous and gracious around people. So I would say that's Tyler 1. The reason I bring up all of that is to say, you might have a kid who rages. There is absolutely a spot to give them some distance, some space to mature. There's also an expectation of how they need to act around others, about what they're representing in themselves and in others. And there are opportunities to grow. Like if Tyler 1 can rein in his rage, your child can too. And so it's not just it's a video game and it makes me mad, I can't do anything about it. Like that's not true. It's not true biblically and it's not true in experience. So this is rage. Some of the ragiest games, just to throw it out for, if your kid plays this game, they might rage. I already mentioned some. So I mentioned Overwatch, Apex, Call of Duty, Fortnite.
The thing that those all have in common is they are multiplayer games.
Yes.
Meaning you are playing either with and or against other actual people playing the game. Yeah. So sometimes like getting mad is you're just not as good as the other people sometimes. And it's always frustrating. Yeah. It's never not frustrating to like absolutely get stomped on by some people who are better than you.
But you also run into the people that aren't as good as you, who do things like camp in a corner with a machine gun.
Exactly.
So you can be the best player in the world and you're still going to get smoked by this like 10-year-old crouched behind a barrel.
So in like stuff like that, like the rage comes from like in a sport being frustrated because you're not where you want to be skill-wise.
Yeah.
So it's just a frustration, which is just a natural thing of improving at anything.
Yeah.
And like in competitive games, you want to improve because you want a better number, because better number, better person.
Which is like, I think that you just nailed it, right? We get our identity so often from our success. Like, well, once I'm a gold level or once I'm platinum, then I'll get respect from my peers. Then I'll have an accurate reflection of like my value and my investment in this thing. And I think that's something we need to talk about with our children, parents, is, hey, son or daughter of mine, like, I see you getting mad at this. Is it because you're in an unhealthy group of players? Is it because you're putting an unhealthy amount of value in the outcome you're expecting of yourself here? Or is it some other thing that like this is supposed to be fun for you, but sometimes there are Tyler 1s in the game who are just ruining the ability for this to be a fun game. I know, Micah, you and I have talked about this before. Like there are groups of friends that can be playing a game you like these people in real life, you like this game, but the two of those together, this group of friends and this game, don't work.
No.
And I think I will say as a teacher and as an ILOSA leader, we had a group of guys where they just really shouldn't play League together. Like that specific game brought out the worst in the group.
in all of them.
Yes. And so parents, keep that in mind as we're meeting our kids with that. If you hear yelling, it's not just par for the course. If you wouldn't let it happen on a soccer pitch, if you wouldn't let it happen on the baseball diamond, if you wouldn't let it happen in the wrestling ring, like it shouldn't be happening behind a screen through a headphone. Like we still have those expectations for our kids' hearts and minds because we don't want this just to be quote unquote normal. It's not normal and it's not okay, but it is going to happen. Like just know that there's nothing more frustrating than a game glitching or crashing or some little kid. Yeah. The second group then I threw was League of Legends, Dota 2, CSGO.
Yes.
And the reason I picked those three is those are older games, parents who are still played professionally. And when we say professional, this is where we're headed in this conversation. Yes. But esports is a thing, parents. Yes. So I won't steal our thunder, but just esports literally just means electronic sports. And all the games that we just mentioned can be played for real world money.
Yes.
Like significant real world money.
Amounts. Like Dota and League, like finals that teams like train for and compete for. The final, the World Cup of League, is the prize pools are often in like several $1 million ranges.
Yes. And that the lead team then, usually made of 5 to 10 players, will get millions, and then the remaining money will be split through the next top teams in that tournament. So that's, and we'll return to that as I mentioned, but other games to keep in mind, any game you're going to put real world money into. So something like Clash of Clans, where you have invested actual cash in addition to your time, and now you're getting destroyed for one reason or another. That can lead to really high levels of frustration. So as you're talking to your kiddo, asking them or learning about the game and asking them to show you what's happening, why is this frustrating, is an awesome point. Acknowledging that they're mad, and then asking them what's going on. We're not telling you that it's reasonable that they're mad. So we're just saying it happens. You should expect it to happen. And our goal isn't simply for your kid to never get mad in a game. In fact, that falls into the same lie that like if our kid just stays away from enough bad stuff, they'll somehow be good. That's not actually the way it works. We start in a place of deprivation. It's why we need Jesus' work through the Holy Spirit to change our hearts and make us new creations. What we're saying is when we get mad, what are we doing with our anger? Are we turning it towards others? Are we turning it to reflect on our identity, value, and worth? Or are we shutting out the world and like running away and causing other problems with there? So if it costs real world money, talk to them about it. What's going on? Last point is some games are just meant to be rage inducing.
Yeah. There are some games that are single player. I mean, you just play by yourself. Yeah. Like Mario is a single player game.
Yep.
Get from point A to point B or complete an objective. The most notorious series of games that is rage-inducing and very hard is called Dark Souls. It's like a medieval fantasy game that's all about its combat. So fighting like really tough enemies, and they hurt a lot when they hit you, and you don't have a lot of health.
And there's no like easy mode.
Yeah, it's one mode, so every single person who plays the game plays the exact same game. You can't make it easier. You can't make it harder. You can literally just get good at the game.
Get good.
So the frustration comes from the game just being hard, and the only thing you can do about it is improve. And when you don't improve, it's frustrating.
And how do you improve?
Just get better. You can get like stronger weapons and like upgrade like skills and stuff, but it comes down to just precisely learning how to dodge this attack when it looks like he's going to do this attack, because they all have a set of moves that they do.
Yeah, like the characters in the game that you're like fighting. Yeah, parents, I think that our generation's version of this would be something like Punch Out, if you remember that. Like
exactly,
where it's just boss after boss after boss, where you have these fights and they all have like special moves and special things, and if you play them the right way, they can become more vulnerable and you can take them down easier. You have to learn, though, the patterns. And now we're talking modern games 20 some odd years later, so the patterns are much more complex.
Yes. It's faster there's a lot more variety of the attacks.
Oh, Dark Souls, so much raging for kids.
Yes.
And I think on the more fun side, so Dark Souls is one, the most recent version being Elden Rings.
Yeah, it's made by the same company that makes Dark Souls, but it's, like 15 years later. They've improved a lot.
Yeah.
The game series is more popular. More people than ever are playing this game.
Yeah.
And this may sound like torture, but that's because we've only explained like the negatives. Like the fun of the game comes from just the game is fun to play. Like controlling your character and like swinging your sword. It's weird to explain if you haven't played a video game, but it feels good. To control your character, it feels good. And like anyone who's played Dark Souls will tell you, being stuck on like one boss level enemy for like a whole day of playing and then coming back the next day and like trying it, there's no feeling better in a video game. It's like this, it's just like winning a really tough soccer match. It's all about the triumph, because the game isn't about the difficulty and getting frustrated. It's about the triumph after you've learned and improved.
Yeah, which video games, so parents, I would actually say for those who are wondering like, why in the world would anyone ever do this? Video games they're intentionally designed this way, and when we talk about behavioral design and why it matters if behavioral psychologists are involved in video game design, it's because they get into the heart of what we are looking for in life, right? We want to know that we matter. We want to know that we're part of something bigger. We want to see improvement. We want constant feedback to know if we're improving or degrading, and video games can do that very well. So this is also part of where unhealthy rage can get tied in with our identity, and where real life can start to slip on its ability to engage our minds and our hearts. Is there are these things that are just so much more accessible, and they kind of make us feel like we're making progress. So keep your eye when you're talking with your kiddo, when you're watching this, when you go and play the game with them, or you sit next to them and observe what's being played. Look for those whys. Like, is it being played just because this is a fun thing and it's fun to do hard things, right? Like, it's all of us have been. Oh, I'm trying to think of. Okay, so my brothers-in-law, when we hang out, we will do just stupid competitions, like who can hit that tree with a rock first. Great. Now, who can like lift this thing the highest or throw this thing the farthest, or right? Like we just do silly games of competition, not because they matter, but because they're hard, and we want to see like be competitive in dumb ways. Yeah. And video games can slip into that. So just know that's the first part. The second part is when games are made to be frustrating, they do get the social cachet of like, I did something hard. Did you do something hard? Like we have similar levels of value. Therefore, now this suddenly matters. Because people care about it.
And suddenly there's a huge community around it as well.
Yep.
Of you can like Elden Ring, when it came out, it was huge. Like probably going to be the biggest game this year.
Yeah.
In 2022. And like online, it was cool because you could watch where the general like population playing the game was by what boss was trending on Twitter that day.
Yes.
Of people like, dude, this guy is hard, and everyone in the replies is like, I know.
Yeah. And you get that shared experience. What Fall Guys would then be another example of a game designed to be difficult. If you guys have never played Fall Guys, you're basically people made out of pudding. I mean, you're just like silly,
like
floppy, floppy little minions. You're effectively indestructible. And it started off as like we're going to combat each other, but now there's like race relay versions of it.
It's a platformer.
Yes.
So it's less about like fighting the other person and more about getting from the beginning of the course to the end of the course. It's like an obstacle course that you can like jump and dive through. And
you get just continually hosed by platforms that move and things that swing and other players like punching you as you're about to cross the finish line. Yeah. And just, if you've ever played Mario Kart, you'll get a similar vibe from that, right?
And Fall Guys, like Fortnite, is what they call a battle royale.
Yes.
So the match starts with 100 players, and each round, like the bottom like 20-ish or so, get knocked out, and they have to join a new lobby.
For Fall Guys?
For Fall Guys.
Yeah. Okay.
But the people, when you keep winning, the better you do, the closer you get to first place, the more guaranteed you are to get to the end, and then it goes down to like the last 5 people, and the first one that reach the end wins the whole thing out of 100 players.
So you can imagine the amount of rage that happens, and you'll hear your kids reference getting dubs in a game, and that's what they mean. They want to get a win in whatever their battle royale thing is, and most of these games have that general concept of a bunch of players going for a single win, and that getting second doesn't count. Like, even though you're going to get points and you're going to get ranks and you're going to do these other gamified kind of bonuses throughout, getting to the end, getting number 1 is what matters most. So let's take a quick aside here. Oh man. All right. I was just trying to think if I want to stop here and give parents a mental break, and then we jump into esports. And then next, let's do that. Okay. All right. So parents, in conclusion then on this section of rage, we had more to say on rage than I thought we would. Shouldn't surprise me. We do want to remember in all of this that we're not just trying to fix our kids. If you have a kid who gets really frustrated at games, this is an amazing opportunity to talk this out with their kiddo. Because the first thing we want to get into is why. Like, what's happening in your mind and heart, and just let them say whatever their thing is. Don't go all psychoanalysis on them. Just let them say, like, no, like, this person's cheating, or I keep dying, or I'm not doing as well, and get them to talk. Maybe even watch them as they do this and see what this thing is that's frustrating. And then keep in your mind, like, we do have a standard for the fruit of our lives, right? When we look at Galatians 5:22, and we know that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, and self-control. Like, we want to remember that those aren't suggestions. Those are things that actually come out of us when Jesus is running our heart, which means when we get anger, that's fine, okay? We can deal with our anger in the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, because anger is fine, especially when we feel like it's injustice, when we feel like we're not adding up. But living in a place of anger, letting that then affect how we treat others or how we think about others, letting it affect how we act to the point where we start cheating or putting people down. Right now we're gossiping, we're slandering, which is the Galatians 5:19 through 21. If you just go right before that, before the fruit of the Spirit is the fruit of the flesh. And when we start seeing that stuff percolate to the surface, sometimes it's the game causing that, but oftentimes it's the game exposing that, right? It's not football that makes me angry. It's football that exposes my anger. C.S. Lewis has a great quote about how when I'm tired, it's not an excuse for my poor attitude or actions. It's actually just showing my poor attitudes and actions. And when I'm well rested, I do better at covering it up.
Yeah.
And I think video games are similar, parents. So we have a standard for love, which would be 1 Corinthians 13, right? That we now have what love should look like, that it's patient and it's kind, right? It's not self-serving. And we have a standard for the fruit that we have in our actions. So I think taking those two, my challenge to you in this conversation, talking about rage, would be talk to your kid about what makes them frustrated. If they play video games, what do you find most frustrating about video games? They're going to have an answer. It'd be interesting to hear what it is. Ask them to let you watch, play with them. And if you're up for it, I'm not going to tell you have to, but if your kid is already playing games, jump in, play a game with them. Ask them to show you how, and you will feel very quickly the frustration that comes with your brain tells the game to do one thing and your big old clumpy hands don't do it right, or you hit the wrong button, or you didn't know that one. And like, just the learning curve and the competitive nature and your desire can bring you back. It's why Dark Souls is a thing, because just the fact that it's hard means it's something you want to do. And I think getting that'll build empathy. You don't have to love video games. You don't have to even want to play them, but recognizing they have value because your kid has value is going to be important. So to put a bow on this, Micah, what do parents need to know about gamer rage?
It's not immediately a bad thing.
Okay.
Like you said, it's could be a symptom of something else, but normally at first it's just a symptom of immediate micro frustration at getting killed when you were so close to killing the other guy, or just barely missing the finish line before the time ends.
Right. And then those are awesome, because then that's just like sports for us. Like parents, we make this correlation to sports, which again, we'll tackle in the next episode because we got all excited about this one. But sports, there is a similar corollary relationship here. And then the third reminder, folks, is just that we do have a biblical standard for this, that we can lovingly bring that in for our kiddos. We're not looking to win any fights. We're not looking to drop any kind of I told you so hammers, but instead we're lovingly come alongside our kids who like games, and we will have that conversation. maybe this game is too much for right now. Maybe this environment is unhealthy for our kid. Maybe our kid is the unhealthy one. Like Tyler 1 is somebody's kid.
Yeah.
And a couple years ago, someone needed to lovingly come alongside him and be like, dude, you got to calm down. Like, go for a walk, go get outside. And you can come back to this when you're healthier, which fortunately for everyone, he is now. And that's what we want to see for our kiddos too.
Yeah.
So
I think what would be helpful, because one thing I don't see a lot of fellow gamers doing is just stop playing the game if it makes you like really mad.
Yeah.
Like, it's honestly, it might be a little healthy to like scream or yell just to get out that frustration, to get back to being calm and focused at what you're doing.
Yeah.
But the bad and unhealthy comes, like we said, when it starts affecting you outside of the game. Like when you decide to stop playing and you're still mad about what happened. Like, just try to like teach them that it's okay to stop playing if you get mad.
Yeah.
Like you can play another game or do something else.
Yeah.
Like if it's making you this mad, like you should just take a break.
Yeah. So great book on that. Jean Twenge, iGen, is a book that she wrote recently. I want to say the last 3 years. Jean Twenge is a professor out of California. I want to say San Diego State. But her book is awesome. And basically she says you need 30 days. Like by the time it's that embedded that you're getting these snap rage moments, you need 30 days to let your brain calm and reflect and reset its chemical levels. Like there are actual imbalances that are measurable in your body that are causing these swings in emotions that may not be reflective of reality. So sometimes your kid just needs 30 days away, and there's more on that. We can talk about resets and such, but we'll end on that, folks.
There are games that exist that don't induce rage.
Yes.
There are games that are literally the exact opposite point, like a Stardew Valley, where you're
Animal
literally
Crossing.
In Stardew Valley, you're literally just a farmer. Like you take care of a farm and then like wait 7 days for crops to grow, and then you harvest them. And that's how you play the game. There's more to it than that, but that's like the core gameplay loop, as you call it, the thing you do over and over.
Yeah.
Like sure, your kid might not be interested in something like that, but like there are games, like even like shooter games, that are a lot less rage inducing than Warzone or Fortnite.
Sure.
There are alternatives.
Portal would be a shooter game that's
Portal, like a story-driven game, like Half-Life.
Yep.
It's completely story-based. There's a multiplayer. No one plays it, so they can't get to that. But like maybe more like story-focused games, where like it's more about experiencing a story than overcoming a really tough challenge. Because like in Dark Souls, there is a story. You're not gonna figure it out. it's too convoluted. They don't tell it to you directly. It's all about the gameplay in that.
Right.
And something like a Halo, like it's all about the story, and like the multiplayer is fun, but it kind of comes second.
Sure.
It's more focused on the story, and the gameplay is not uber challenging by design.
So, in review, the rage is normal. Join your kid in the conversation, knowing that their health is the focus and that there is hope in the gospel for what their heart is supposed to be doing. So we're not just trying to fix your kiddo. They're not a problem to fix. They're a person to love. And we do that in the gospel and in the love that Christ gives us. And there may be a time to step away. So if you have any questions on this, you can reach out to me directly, Nathan@gospeltech.net. You can find us on social media at Love God Use Tech on both Instagram and Facebook. And you can join us next week as we continue this conversation about how we can love God and use tech.